If this stuff is so great, what is so great about us that we're any different from anybody else? Or are we just like holy rollers and Taoists and Hasidic Jews and everybody else who thinks they've found the final answer? What is so great about it? I think of Yanomami culture. Certainly from the exterior, this looks like a fairly brutal culture. It's the only culture where DMT is a regularly abused drug, and the men blasted up each other's nostrils with these hollow tubes, and then the name of the game is two guys square off, and you plant your feet flat on the ground, and the guy who goes first hits the other guy as hard as he can with the flat of his palm in the chest. And the game is to knock the person over. So you absorb this blow, and then it's your turn. And you get up, and you do it. And these two guys, total saliva to the four winds, will stand and do this till somebody is knocked off their pins. Well, so then you ask them, what's going on here? Is this like the Super Bowl? Is this fun for you guys? And they explain that they have demons that live in their chest, and they collect these demons on their psychedelic trips, and the more demons you have, the harder it is to knock you over. So they're doing this thing, but they're also lacerating each other with clubs and this sort of thing. I think that it's fouled up. I have the faith that if you have psychedelic religious ritual in combination with group sex in a small tribal group whose economy is based on nomadic pastoralism, that then it will be very, very hard for these people to maintain a neurotic lifestyle. But that if you interfere with any of this, then you'll get anxiety. And so you have psychedelic cultures, but the Yanomamo, this is a culture of male dominance and sexual anxiety. But I think that the main thing is that the cultural group must take the psychedelic frequently enough that the ego does not form, and that the specific manifestation of ego that you want to watch out for is concern for male paternity. That once it's gone that far, it's lost, and then, because then there's male rivalry for women and territory. It would be very interesting to prove psilocybin use in ancient Ireland. That people who have been to places like Ionia and like that say they're just overrun with mushrooms. And yet it's not explicit in any Celtic source. There's a lot of psilocybe in Europe. I mean, I was surprised. I thought that it occurred rarely, and so you could make the argument that it was possibly there. But last year when I did a speaking tour of Germany, and we were from Hamburg clear down to Munich and into Switzerland, everywhere there were mushrooms. And we would talk like we're talking here and then have lunch recess, and people would come back 2 hours later with small grocery bags full of these things. Well, there must be something we don't quite grok about why the mushroom image is taboo. Maybe because it looks like a penis, but that doesn't really sound right to me. But why is it so rarely portrayed in all these areas where it must have been used? For instance, in the northwest coast of Oregon and Washington, there are something like 22 indigenous species of psilocybe, no anthropological record of mushroom use by the Northwest Coast Indians, who were clearly paying attention. I mean, when you look at their carving and painting, they were paying attention. Where is the record of the mushroom use? In ancient Ireland and throughout the Celtic area, into Germany and Bohemia. So this is puzzling, not easy to understand. I would like to believe that in Africa, 15,000 years ago, the primary religion of humanity was goddess-worshipping pastoralism based on sacramental use of mushrooms. But again, the physical evidence is just a few petroglyphs, drawings on stone. And it isn't a strongly proven case, so it's not well understood. It's hard to believe that the Irish weren't mixed up in this somehow. I mean, it seems so basic to the Irish soul. But I think it's good to take Stropharia cubensis because then you know what you're getting. Because it's, some of these small psilocybes look physically very much like Galerina species that have irreversible liver-destructive toxins in them. So if you eat a Galerina, you'll have a very bad experience. Or maybe a very good experience, but none of us will ever know. You all know this mushroom, the red one with the white dots on top of it, the toadstool of European mythology. It's used in Siberia and places like that as an intoxicant, and Gordon Wasson thought that it was the basis of soma. But it now looks like it probably isn't the basis of soma, and that it's very variable, seasonally variable, geographically variable, genetically variable. So you never know what you're going to get. It's very hard to obtain a reliable, desirable intoxication from that mushroom. There are a lot of these things that are sickening and distorting, and that after you've gone through a night with them, you feel reborn because you're so damn glad you lived through it. But they're not really psychedelic. But the thing that I noticed about ketamine is the first thing that happens is you stop worrying. The very first thing, before there's any manifestation of any symptom whatsoever, you kind of, what the hell? With the DMT, the main thing is, at first you think, my God, how could anyone ever retain or remember any of this? But it's really that you have to learn to control your own astonishment. That it's like having a heart attack of wonder. And after you've had the experience 3 or 4 times, you just learn to be cool. You say, I am not going to give way to a bunch of exclamations about how amazing this is. And they tell you to do that. They say, don't start raving about how amazing it is. Pay attention to what we're doing. We know that you're blown out. We know that you're amazed. Yes, yes. Now, pay attention to this. And then they try to convey this linguistic thing, this visible language. And I don't understand, what this is all about. Has this always been what they've tried to convey? Is the message always the same? Is there a new urgency about visible language? Or, how much of the message is already present in me? Is it a message tailored for me? Like this question of what ancestors are they? Like I do not feel when I break into the DMT space that this is my dead mother or my grandparents. I feel that it's just sort of local spirits. And then sometimes I think that the reason it's so hair-raising is because the chief soul in this weird place is actually your soul. And that the hair-raising aspect is, it's not just any dead person or a dead relative, it's you dead. And that's the one thing that causes the whole thing to shimmy and fall apart and go into a tailspin of cognitive dissonance. When you realize that the entity you're dealing with is yourself beyond the grave, then you just flood out in the amazement, wonder, horror, and disbelief department and lose the focus and come down. 5 grams is what I think would destroy most of the resistances of a 145-pound person. A person who weighed 90 pounds could take far less, but a person who weighed 90 pounds who took 5 grams should be in no physical danger. You can play with it, but at higher doses it gets stranger and stranger and stranger and stranger. I mean, anything above 8, you're definitely a pioneer as far as I'm concerned. But it's a good point. if you weigh 90 pounds, you maybe don't want to chow down on 5 grams, but to do more rather than less, because otherwise you can miss the point.